Okay, Dr. Ismail, I shouldn't take more of your time. Uh, I think we're ready to begin. I will first begin by saying hello to everyone who joined us today. Uh, this webinar is supported with a generous contribution from Qatar Foundation International and the sponsorship of the Institute for Middle East Studies at the George Washington University. I would like first to welcome Dr. Ismail ibn Ali, who will be our panelist today. Dr. Ismail ibn Ali is the head of school at the Al-Fath Academy in Northern Virginia. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from the University of Florida, a Master of Science in Education from Johns Hopkins University, and a Doctorate of Education from the University of Central Florida. His doctoral dissertation examined the implementation of positive behavioral intervention and support and its influence on student disciplinary outcomes in public schools. He has taught in a variety of public and private public schools, K to 12 settings over the last 15 years. He holds an administrative professional certification for school principalship and is licensed in an MS and HS biology in Maryland, as well as Florida and Virginia. He is also the executive director and instructor at Fawakah Institute, where he manages instruction for hundreds of students worldwide and leads the development of Fawakah's Quranic Arabic curriculum. Dr. bin Ismail, Dr. Ismail, without further ado, I would give you the floor, and we will have plenty of time, ample time for our participants to engage directly with you and ask the questions that they want. So please, the floor is yours.
Shukran. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everyone. Marhaba bikum. It's an honor to be with you all today for this presentation, this panel, this webinar, I mean, and hopefully this will be an interactive session. I'm very thankful to Professor Khalil and his team for inviting me and putting this on, and I hope to be able to positively contribute towards the efforts that the Institute for Middle East Studies is doing, and this is hopefully one piece of that larger puzzle of work. I appreciate the introduction from Dr. Khalil. I had prepared a slide just in case. I won't go through it, but the point here is only to show that my experience in education has been one in a variety of settings. And you can learn a little bit about me through the symbols on the bottom. So if you recognize the flag on the right, my mother and father are both from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And I grew up in Miami, Florida, so I'm a fan of the Miami Heat, which is the basketball logo there. And then I have my university degree, University of Central Florida, and then I'm a follower of Manchester United for soccer. So, sometimes we build camaraderie through our affiliations, and it's nice to be able to, get to hopefully through this know you all as well. If you're able to, in the chat or even if on your name, it would be lovely to know just where you're coming from, either what school or grade you teach. That way we have a sense of the audience as well, unless, I don't mind actually being a teacher and just calling on folks to call. I see Anas here, Cynthia, Fadwa, Gad, Hiba, Layali, Lubna, Ms. Rawa, who is actually here at our school, and Satane, if I understood that correctly. Um, and if you'd like to just introduce yourself quickly for the audience, then we can go down the line. Just state your name, what you do, and what grades you teach or where you teach. Okay, see chat. Okay, so maybe the chat is not available for you. Um, but yeah, if you don't mind coming on the microphone and just saying it, then that would be fine. I'll start with Layali.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I teach Arabic at the mostly elementary level, but all levels really, and I've taught as an adjunct faculty at colleges. I am currently in Maryland, but I was in Florida for a couple of years, Florida Atlantic University, so there's a connection there. What else? Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I see Cynthia next. Cynthia, would you introduce yourself?
I
Oh,
can
yeah.
I can
Go ahead.
talk. Oh, I see the map now.
Okay, well,
My name is Fidwa Hussein. I teach now at DCPS public school, middle school. I had, as you said, in a different setting. I taught elementary, taught high school, and college at George Mason University. Also Nova for 2 years. But now I am teaching Arabic for middle school, and they are novice, very novice. So Americans.
okay. Thank you for that. Welcome. I see Lubna next.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I'm Lubna Nasser, an Arabic teacher in mainstream schools at the UK, Brighton, and I'm teaching Arabic from year 7 to GCSE.
Okay. Wonderful. Nice to have a UK participant here. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, Ms. Rawa.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rawa, and I am an Arabic teacher for lower elementary and middle school students in Al Fatih Academy. And the Arabic is leveled in middle school, and I teach level 3 Arabic.
Okay, shukran. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feek.
Thank you.
Anyone else who hasn't gone who is able to share? Otherwise, we'll continue and we'll give you another chance to share later on. Okay, and once you've shared, you can turn your mic off so that we can, and we'll go ahead and continue then. All right, so Bismillah. So the purpose of this session, the session is titled How to Effectively Handle Disruptions and Bullying in the Language Classroom. And to that end, we have a few outcomes that we hope you all will take away with you. So by the end of this session, participants will understand classroom disruptions and bullying and why they emerge in language classrooms specifically. We hope participants will apply preventive or preventative classroom management practices to proactively address disruptions and bullying. Participants will implement responsive classroom practices to respond to misbehavior and provide logical consequences, and continue to reflect on their professional practice as it relates to classroom management and student discipline. So there's a lot there. There's a lot that could be said. I also want to make sure that we are respectful of everyone's time and talk about the essentials. And then, of course, if you have questions or feel like there's something that I haven't clarified, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and ask, and I'll make sure that you can ask that. Just a small note before we go through the presentation. I did do some work to take some of the work I've done and put it into an infographic or make it something that would be a little bit more digestible given the format. So I just wanted to put it out there that I did utilize some AI software for creating these infographics, but they're all original from me. And so also too, I'm more than happy to share this slide deck at the end with the participants through Professor Khalil. And so when you see it, you'll know that these are from my own creation. I haven't taken them from somewhere else, and anything else I have attributed it, appropriately. So our session today has a few key components. We'll do a little bit of an introduction to the ideas behind this session. We'll look at a theoretical framework. Again, not super deep research, just some of the essentials that we need to be able to have the shared language that we want for this discussion. We'll look at some practical applications. How can we prevent things in our classroom, first and foremost? We'll also look at, well, when things do inevitably happen, how can we respond to misbehavior? And then we'll look at a concept called logical consequences. And then we'll summarize it and, of course, ask questions if you have. At that time, you're more than, again, like I said, welcome to ask them in between by raising your hand. So, sanabda, inshallah, let's get into it. So I'm going to start with a scenario, okay? And this scenario will guide us through the presentation. We'll look at it at different angles in different parts of the presentation. So imagine you're teaching grade 6 Arabic. Okay, so I know for different, schools that could be in middle school, that could be a level 1 class, that could be maybe a heritage class somewhere else. We'll just for this scenario say it's a grade 6 class where predominantly the students are non-native speakers of Arabic. Today's lesson introduces the past tense pattern for Form 1 verbs. يعني فعل. You explain the pattern on the board, you model 2 examples, and then assign independent practice. Students must conjugate 12 verbs and write 3 original sentences using the new form. So you do this, and then within 5 minutes of giving this instruction, you notice 3 students have their heads down. 2 students are quietly copying from one another. 1 student says, "I hate this class." A heritage speaker finishes the assignment quickly and begins talking to a friend. A student mutters, "Why do we have to learn this? No one talks like this." So you just did this whole lesson, you gave them instructions. This is the response within 5 minutes. You observe all of this. So you say something like, "This is important grammar, stay on task." After saying that, though, the talking just increases. 1 student refuses to write. 1 asks to go to the restroom. So, you can just using the feature on Zoom, you can just raise your Zoom hand and tell me if you've been in a situation similar to this before, where the idea is you taught something, you gave instructions, and seemingly kids are disengaged or doing some things that you don't want them to ideally be doing. Right? If you've been in this situation, which I would imagine all of us have at some point in our educational careers, we have a few things here to look at. We can look at what behaviors do we observe? Are they disruptive or not? Is anybody, thinking about the structure of the class, right? What is the environment like in this class that this is taking place within? What role did the task design itself have as an influence on the behaviors the students are exhibiting? And perhaps the question also could be, what are some of the reasons students might be exhibiting this behavior? And as you analyze this, the first part of the scenario I gave is related specifically to lesson planning and lesson execution and your management of the class. That is its own entire session. There's so much that could be spoken about how to make this lesson engaging, how to break it up, how to manage the pacing, etc. But that's not the focus of our discussion today. But it is important, and I will always tell faculty or staff that the number 1 tool that you can have to manage your classroom is to have a fantastic lesson that's well planned. If you have an engaging planned lesson, then students will be engaged, at least the overwhelming majority will be, and you'll have much fewer issues in your classroom. But again, that's a whole nother discussion. If we look at the behaviors that students exhibited, these are related to, what they could be feeling or thinking at that moment in time. These are related to what are the classroom rules and expectations? How did the teacher set that up? We also have here the teacher response. That's going to be a very important part of how to handle disruptions and bullying in the classroom. And, the last line here, in its own way, gives us a sense of the student-teacher relationship. If a teacher gives a directive and the students do the opposite, or one student shuts down, as we see here, another student tries to refuse to do the assignment, asks to go to the restroom just to get out. That can give us an indication of the culture of the class. And all of these things work together to get your ideal classroom. So today we're going to look at the behaviors component. We're going to look at the teacher as the, creator of climate in the classroom. And then the student as they respond to the teacher, and the student as they, what's going on within them that would make them act in the way that they do, for example, in this scenario. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at overall. And to help us do that, it is important to step back a little bit and look at how do we understand school, how do we understand student behaviors, and how do we understand teachers in that process. So if you think about school for a moment, we have this term in education, it's called school climate, where we look at a school, any given setting, it could be a classroom or the school as a whole. And climate, I'm going to argue here, is really the perceptions that everyone holds, right, by all stakeholders, teachers, students, staff, visitors, etc., regarding social interactions, relationships, values, and beliefs held by everybody, right, all the stakeholders. So climate is shaped by the individuals that are within the environment. Of course, the central agent in the school climate is the student, right? Students are the main participants, and they actively help create the climate. Of course, students have individual needs, so that necessitates a tailored, inclusive environment. And so the teacher, who is also an active creator of the climate, must take that into consideration. Their own belief in their ability, their efficacy, has been shown to play a major role. Do I have the skills and the tools to deal with students? Do I have the skills and the tools to deliver an engaging lesson plan? And their perception of the environment also plays a huge impact. So if I come in and feel like, oh, this is not a place where I can truly thrive, or this is not a place where students are held accountable, that will have a negative influence, as research has shown, on your school, or on your classroom first and foremost, and then the school as a whole. What a lot of teachers talk about that influences their perception of the environment and the climate is student behavior, right? If you ask teachers a lot of times, what is the most difficult part of your job? Aside from sometimes I would argue the parent side of things, right? Having to work with parents, usually it comes down to behaviors, right? Whenever students are frustrated, whenever teachers are frustrated, behavior is the issue. And it's important to understand how we can view a child's behavior. So there's a lot of research on behavior, and I'm not going to go through all of it. What I wanted to essentially highlight is if you look on the left-hand side, the orange side, there's a view of behavior as something external, meaning I see a student do something, and that is based on some external stimulus, whether, I don't know, a student poked them, right? A student was messing around with them, or there's something in the environment that the student doesn't like, so they then perform a certain behavior. If that's the view of behavior, that it's only based on external stimuli, then a lot of the adjustments that you make will be regarding the environment itself. So maybe you change seats, right? And that works to help a student focus because that student who's bothering them is no longer next to them. And this is a term called behaviorism in the research. And a lot of our approach to working with students and our approaches to discipline in the past has been based on this view of students. Of course, no one here would say that's the only view of students. Students also have things happening internally. So in more recent years, there's been more research on, the cognitive and affective domains of students as a way to, or rather to learn about how those influence student behaviors so that we can address more of the root causes that may be underlying the behaviors that students have, right? So a more holistic behavioral therapy approach that doesn't just look at what's happening outwardly, but also tries to look at what's happening inwardly. And I think that's very important because a lot of our training, at least I'll speak for myself initially as a teacher, was all about looking at, you see this, do this, without any sort of trying to dive a little deeper to figure out why that might be occurring. And the why is really important. Nevertheless, there are behaviors that students will exhibit that are disruptive. And I think it's important to identify what we mean by disruptive behaviors so that we know, the types of things that we're going to be dealing with as we, go through this. So one definition that you can look at, disruptive behavior refers to behaviors that interrupt instruction, right? Reduce engaged learning time, or destabilize the classroom social emotional climate. AKA, students can't learn in the most efficient way possible, in the best way possible. So these could include things like off-task behavior, calling out, joking, refusal or avoidance, escalating peer conflict, or I think this is a big one, dysregulated behavior that spreads to peers. A lot of what I would say that I see with students nowadays often comes from dysregulation, emotional dysregulation within the child. And then we as teachers have to also be ourselves regulated, and we have moments where we are also dysregulated. And that then doesn't help the student learn what they need to do to manage that dysregulation so that they don't participate in the behaviors that are disruptive. If you take these behaviors and you elevate them in consistency, then you will have a case potentially, especially if it's targeting an individual student or students, of bullying. And bullying ultimately is characterized by an imbalance of power between, and let's say if there's two students, one student is using their power to influence another student. And this behavior is often repeated. It manifests in unwanted interpersonal behavior. And it is usually targeted and causes emotional harm. So bullying is, these disruptive behaviors on their own, you can manage that with one set of skills. Bullying, on the other hand, now is when those things perhaps fail and now escalate into something more that will then require, as we'll see, still some of the same tools, but may require more support beyond that. And bullying, I would argue also is a product of, or, is influenced by the environment that the teacher sets up. So the teacher's management of the classroom environment is, of course, a really big deal. That's where we get this whole term of classroom management, right? And there are a lot of different elements to classroom management. From the instruction, as I mentioned earlier, to the setup of the classroom, the amount of time and pacing that you give things to students, the materials they're using. And then, of course, there's the routines and procedures which will influence student behavior, and then the behavior themselves. And we do all of this, we manage all of these things because we want students to learn, right? The whole reason that we're there together is so that students achieve and they meet certain instructional objectives or they meet certain goals for the class. Again, each of these wheels in this classroom management diagram require their own webinar. We're going to focus primarily on the ones regarding routine and procedures and then the behaviors. But before we do that, I think it is important to just get a sense of, what are the things that we see as teachers that influence our classroom and influence our students' ability to achieve. So to do a little exercise with you, okay, I'm going to list out 5 factors. If you can't type, that's okay. We can maybe just have some of you come on the mic and say what you think. But I'm going to list 5 things, and I want you to tell me if you think each of these either A, has a positive effect on student achievement, B, it has minimal or no effect, or C, it has a reverse effect. It would harm or it would reduce student achievement. So I'm going to put 5 things here. I'll let you think about it for a minute. All right, reducing class size. Does that have a positive effect, a minimal effect, or reverse effect? Classroom discussion, positive, minimal, or reverse. One-on-one laptops, homework, and suspensions. Suspensions meaning if a student is removed from the classroom for some period of time. Take a moment, and then if someone wants to raise their hand and tell me what they put, we'll see if we agree with, not just if we agree, but what the research, as we'll see, shows. Okay. Someone ready to share out with us how they would respond for each of these? You don't have to give a full explanation. You can just say, reducing class size, I think, has this effect. Otherwise, I will do my teacher cold calling and you can hop on. Okay, so I see Hiba here. I haven't heard from her. Hiba, if you're able to come onto the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can participate if you want.
Sure, Fadwa, go ahead.
I believe reducing class size, it's really good. I give it A from like 30, 25. It would be really nice if we have 15 students to 20. 2, classroom discussion. Yes, perfect. I like it. So it's A, positive effect.
Okay.
I mean, discussion as an introduction to lesson or as introduction, to whatever I want. So always I have discussion in my class. One-on-one laptop, I think B,
Okay.
because I can go to stations. Homework, I don't rely on homework, so I believe also B.
Okay.
Suspensions, I feel it's C.
Okay.
So suspensions, unless if the school, they won't suspend him, it's a different story.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for those. So I chose these because thank you for your participation. I chose these because there is a famous book that we study in education, Visible Learning by John Hattie. And in that book, Professor John Hattie, basically what he does is he looks at over 320 different factors that could influence student achievement. And they are based on factors related to student profile, teacher profile, the classroom, home life, strategies, many different things. And I've always found the research fascinating because he looks at different meta-analyses or studies related to those specific things, and he aggregates all that data and then gives what's called a mean effect size, or Cohen's d, statistically speaking. And if you look at the research, I think I've been, quite surprised by some of these, and these are quite robust things. It's not just, one study did this. Some of these studies, as we'll see, have hundreds of thousands of students in them over many different studies. So these 5 I chose because he has a barometer of influence, he calls it, and he just highlights a few. So if you look at reducing class size, right? Let me grab my little. laser pointer. So reducing class sizes right here, it actually has been shown to have a positive, but a very small positive effect on student achievement. Classroom discussion, absolutely. It has a mean effect size actually of 0.86. It's been updated since this, right? It has the potential to accelerate learning. The more classroom discussion you build in, the higher student achievement has been shown in the research. One-on-one laptops, as Sister Fadwa said, small but positive, right? It's not going to make or break your classroom if they have that. But you'll see some schools will promote that we have one-on-one laptops for the entire school. It doesn't necessarily lead to more learning. Homework, we have a lot of discussion with teachers about homework. And homework itself is shown to have a positive effect, but again, still small, not compared to some of these other ones that you see on the screen. And then suspension actually has been shown, as I think you'd probably all agree, to have a negative effect, a negative impact on classroom, on student achievement. And I show this because there are so many things that influence student achievement and influence your classroom. As you can see here, though, we have classroom management is here. And there are others that are related to classroom management that are in this zone of desired effects. They have a really big influence on student achievement. So if you go into his research, you'll see that classroom management, this process of maintaining the classroom with an orderly environment, having techniques for planning and prevention, the establishment of fair and reasonable rules, the effect size is 0.43. So in his studies, anything above 0.4 is shown to have a large effect, have a positive influence on student achievement. So as you can see there's quite a bit of research that's been done on this over the years. So us getting our classroom management down is essential. Now, decreasing disruptive behavior, he has that as a separate influence. So when teachers work to minimize the amount and the quality, if you like, or the severity of disruptive behaviors in their classroom, this has a huge influence. So the effect size is 0.81, right? Almost double that of classroom management. Of course, they go hand in hand, but this is not the same number of students in the studies, but still a robust number of studies, right? 109 studies from all over the world. So us helping students with their behavior is going to drive our achievement in our classrooms. And I know that it probably sounds intuitive, but I think it's important to see the research behind it and why we spend the time on it. Where I see the disconnect is we focus a lot on this, but we're not necessarily focusing on the practices that can decrease disruptive behavior in a way that benefits students in the long run. A lot of us will try techniques that are very short term that maybe change the student's behavior immediately, but doesn't necessarily help the student learn to self-discipline and learn to have exercise and impulse control, which, as we'll see, is at the root of a lot of these different behaviors. There are different frameworks for measuring how effective a teacher is, and I'm just putting this here to highlight that we hope to be in this, quadrant here on the right of, having classrooms where students display positive behaviors, which are modeled by teachers and reinforced to promote reflection and recalibration. Right here, this part here. We want to be proficient in this, and the techniques that I hope to show you today will help us get to this, and will influence the routines that we have in our classroom as well to maintain that purposeful environment. So with that said, I do think it is important to think a little bit about our second language acquisition classroom, so our Arabic classrooms. I'm primarily looking at second language acquisition classrooms. Some of you maybe have, all heritage speakers depending on your situation, but I think some of the lessons still apply. So let's look a little bit at our classrooms to understand what are some of the things that may be unique to a behavior of the behavior of students in an Arabic classroom. So there's been lots of research that has looked at how language learning affects students and of different ages. And again, basically, if you want to look at this just as at a high level, learning a language, especially a language like Arabic, for if you're in a primarily English-speaking area with a different script, any language that has a different script, it's read in a different direction. It has letters that we don't pronounce in English. Bad is non-existent in English, right? For example, it's going to cause students to have some level of cognitive burden that would be more than they might have in other classes, right? I think that is fairly understandable. In our classrooms, that becomes important because if we are doing a very high cognitive load work for a long period of time, students get fatigued, students will get stressed, students will get tired. At the same time, it's not the same cognitive burden for everyone, right? Maybe we have some students who come from families that are that maybe speak Arabic at home, or for example, students who maybe are Muslim and read the Quran, so they understand the script, they can read it, but they don't know what it means, for example. That's still a leg up compared to someone who has never seen Arabic before, but they still may be in a level 1 class, right? So differentiation is going to be essential. And there's going to be also the potential for inter-student dynamics that would lead to something like bullying, right? So making fun of a student who maybe doesn't say the bod properly, or someone who can't really say ayn properly, or someone who struggles to write in the script. All of these things can come from the fact that our classrooms, especially a language classroom, will exhibit very easily these differences in students, right? If you're in a science class and you don't understand a concept, well, you're not going to be necessarily speaking the science in the same way that you have to speak in a language classroom, or that you have to write in a language classroom. So all of those things can make things difficult for a student, and that will, of course, influence how they perceive themselves and how vulnerable they're willing to be. To learn any language, right, requires vulnerability. It requires being confident in the fact that it's okay to make mistakes and you'll grow from those mistakes. If someone mispronounces words, then their identity, how they view themselves as a learner, can be tied to that mispronunciation that they may have. So the psychological side of things, we have to be very aware of in our classrooms. And that's why having a climate that's inviting and allows for mistakes and promotes growth together is going to be very important to establish the expectation that these disruptive behaviors should not happen. But when they do happen, we have the right environment to help them reset and meet their goals for that lesson. So trying to digest that, let's revisit the scenario. Okay, so you're a grade 6 Arabic teacher, you taught them how to conjugate a verb in the past tense. Fa'ala, fa'ala, huwa fa'ala, huma fa'ala, hum fa'alu, or maybe you don't do the dual. You start with ana fa'altu, whatever you do, right? You give them your conjugation. And then you say, here are 12 verbs. Darasa, fataha, sami'a, karuma, whichever verbs, go ahead and conjugate them. And then use them in a sentence with the vocab you've been given. And you notice in 5 minutes that 3 students have their heads down. So of course, this is just my thought on this, but more likely than not, those students have shut down because for some reason they're cognitively burdened, right? Their load is too much. Or there's some process fatigue that has occurred. Maybe you going through those examples on the board was too much for them without a break in between. Or the way that you presented it, it required a lot of effort on their part, and now they're like, oh, this is another thing for me to do. I'm not going to do this now. So that looks like defiance. That maybe looks like, not following instructions, but there's something deeper there. Some students start copying from one another, right? Perhaps they're overwhelmed. Perhaps they're indifferent. I've seen students who are like, I don't care. I'm just going to do this because I don't care about this class. Right? Now that's turned into an academic integrity concern. Students are now copying from one another. But maybe they're masking something else, right? A student may copy because they don't want to get something wrong, because they don't want to get found out that they don't know it. It's going to be something that, yes, it's a bad thing, right? Academic integrity is a problem. But before we address that concern, we have to look at why the student resorted to that tactic. One student says, I hate this class, right? Their discomfort, they want to try to hide that discomfort. So they say something that makes the teacher feel like, well, okay, doesn't even matter for me. I just hate this. Like, I'm not even going to engage. But maybe deep down they want to engage, but they don't know how to, or they just feel like they're inadequate. The heritage speaker finishes quickly, right? So maybe that person didn't have the right level of challenge. There's a question there about how are you supporting the different levels of students in the class. If they're not supported, then there is going to be disruption. They'll finish quickly. They'll start talking to people. They'll help someone copy, right? There's a lot that can come from that. The student who mutters, why do I need to learn this? Right? The student is trying to figure out how it relates to themselves, and they don't see themselves in this moment as an Arabic language learner. That's going to undermine the classroom, right? Imagine trying to go back and forth with that student in front of everybody, but sometimes we get drawn into that by students, but we have to try to resist that as much as we can. So you can see here that there's a lot that's going on, and we cannot simply try to deal with these behaviors without looking at what is the environment we've set up, and then provided all that is there, how do we address these specific things as they come? So now let's turn to what are some of the things that we need to practically have in place to help us begin to address these concerns. And we're going to start with these preventative things that you should have in place. If you don't have them in place now, or you have versions of them, you can reflect and figure out, how can I improve these in my classroom now? So the famous book for beginning teachers called The First Days of School by a guy named Harry Wong, and he said in that book, the number one problem in the classroom is not discipline, it is the lack of procedures and routines. Right? If we have solid procedures and routines, the discipline component will actually come through. So there's a practice that we use at our school for student behavior and student management as a whole called responsive classroom. It is a specific philosophy of how to approach students, how to teach them. There's a whole section about your lesson planning regarding this. But I'm going to draw from that to help us understand some preventive practices for how to manage student behavior. And I've taken what they've done and adapted it a little bit, and hopefully you'll find my adaptations valid. So one of the main things that you have to have in place in your classroom is rule creation, right? So one second. These rules are things that you will have to create with your students, and that you will have to ensure that everyone agrees to. So if I can ask someone from the audience, do you have a set of classroom rules that you create with the students at the beginning of the year and refer back to? If so, what's an example of some of those rules? What's something that you try to build as rules with your students? Yes, Sister Fadwa.
First of all, I have to leave within 1 minute because I have another meeting.
No
but
problem.
yes, we do. I have set of rules. Sometimes I create it, then I just discuss it with them. They create their own rules also, like the respect of stations. They stand up by the door, wait for me to greet them, and then take the folder, take the papers. Just this is the first day we explore all these. We explore the room, and then everything else, how to respect the materials. I'm sorry, but I have to leave because
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for giving us that.
but the chat is not really working. So I wanted to write something in the chat.
Yeah. If we can get the chat to allow, that would be great, so people can respond there, and then I can also do that feedback.
Okay, thank you.
But
Bye-bye.
thank you, Stefan.
مع السلامة.
Assalamu alaikum. So I'll talk about this a little bit. She gave us a good idea of that. The second thing I'm going to call is what I call classroom majlis. So building a sense of community and set up children for success. And the third component is what we call positive teacher language. So when it comes to rule creation, we have to think about what are the expectations that students are given for their classroom, and how can we work with them so they also hold themselves accountable to those rules. So in this, with this understanding, in order to create rules with your students at the beginning of the year, or even now, it's always good to even go back and re-articulate these with students. You can have students work to share their learning goals for the year, right? So students maybe want to pass the class, whatever it is, you have them brainstorm that. Then you have a process of students generating rules that allow everyone to reach those goals. So in order for all of us to reach our goals, we have to commit to respecting each other's personal space and classroom materials, right? Students may say, oh, we need to be quiet when the teacher's talking. So they may brainstorm a set of these things, and then you help them frame those in a positive way so that it is a positive statement. So something like, respect one another, for example. Listen attentively when someone else is speaking, right? Maybe you can condense the list so that you end up with a few key goals that a few key rules that everyone agrees to, and that you can always refer back to. So in my classroom, these were posted on the wall, and I could always look back. If a student needed a reminder, I can just point to and they understood, okay, Ustad Ismail is asking me to remind myself of this rule, and it would work a lot of the time. One that I offer for you all as Arabic teachers is based on the word in Arabic, adab, right? So of course, adab we use for, moral, ethical behavior. We also use it for literature, right? And that's actually really amazing because in the lugha, we understand that the word adab, the linguistic, the original meaning, if you look in a dictionary like Maqayis al-Lugha of Ibn Faris, you'll see ad-da'wa ila ta'am, right? An invitation to food, to a gathering of food. And when you get invited to someone's house, there's a certain decorum you have to have, right? There's a certain way of being a guest in someone's home. Literature is about knowing how to put words in the right place to create a piece of literature. And adab is about knowing how to behave in a certain place for a certain time with the right behavior. So putting things in the right place. So in an Arabic classroom, adab may be a nice, acronym for A, be attentive, D, be dependable, A, be appreciative, and B, be brave. All right, so I have here what it looks like. This is something you can work with students to create. What does it look like to be attentive, facing the person? If you're reading an Arabic nas, you're tracking the text with your finger along the page. If you need a teacher's help, you have a signal with your teacher to get the teacher's help. All right, being dependable, bringing your notebook and your materials on time, right? Taking care of the class, being appreciative, understanding we have differentiation in the classroom, people at different levels. Being brave, right? If we all agree that we're going to be brave and be vulnerable, then hopefully we will have less of the teasing and the silliness that will go on in the classroom. So this rule creation is one important step. The second one here is what I call majlis. So this is inspired by a lot of our classrooms, especially if you teach elementary, have a concept of morning meeting or advisory meeting in middle and high school, where they usually have a 20, 30-minute meeting. That has different components to it. So I'm not saying in your classroom have a 20 to 30-minute meeting. I don't know how many of you can actually do that every class. But I think you can adapt this idea into something that will benefit your Arabic language classroom so that you can meet the same objectives of building team spirit, of, as you'll see, previewing the activity for the day, of getting their minds primed and ready to go, and building the camaraderie by having students greet one another. So since it's an Arabic classroom, I use the word majlis, and I would say your majlis can have the following in just 5 to 7 minutes, right? Have a whole class greeting, a call and response in Arabic, right? Maybe a lot of us probably already do this, the salam piece. The key is to do it ideally in a circle with your class. If you can arrange the chairs or sit on a rug, something, where for 5 minutes you're going to have this little meeting. And there'll be some sharing. There could be a prompt that you write on the board. So for example, here I wrote, قُلْ كَلِمَةً جَدِيدَةً تَعَلَّمْتَهَا الْأَمْسِ. Right? Write a word that you learned yesterday, a new word that you learned before. So they come, as they enter the room, they write it on the board. Or, complete this sentence, اليوم أشعر ب, and they complete it. Right? You guys, whatever your unit, you adjust this to your unit. And then do some activity, either that has movement or some recall game in the Arabic, that, again, gets them primed. Remember that cognitive load issue. You want them to do things in small chunks that works toward that. And then a morning message. So you'll see in some of the resources that I have for you all, I put some sample messages you could use, written in Arabic or English, depending on the level of the class, that introduce the activities. So today we're going to learn about the fi'l mudari, past tense verbs. We're going to review the expectations. We're going to do it whole group, and then we're going to work individually or in pairs. And you can personalize it. I would add a joke to mine, right? A dad joke, as they say. Just something to get them to feel the culture with you as a teacher. So we have the rules, we have the classroom majlis, and then we have the positive teacher language. So this refers to basically framing your words with students so that you are able to respond, before the respond piece, talk to them in a way that is direct, that gives them clarity of instruction, and removes ambiguity in the process. And so according to Responsive Classroom, there's 5 guidelines for this. Be direct and authentic. Show faith in children's abilities and intentions. Keep it action-oriented. Keep it brief. And know when to be silent. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples of this, and you can give me some feedback on it. So if you look, I have some scenarios here. Okay, so if you just look at the first one, some students are looking around the room, flipping pages ahead instead of following along. So you as a teacher see that. Many of us would right away say something like, could we please focus on the reading? Right? You're asking a question that they could maybe say, no, I don't want to focus on the reading too. However, in the positive teacher view, you would say something like, everyone, eyes on the nas or eyes on the text, track the line with your finger. It's direct, it's very clear what to do. Put your finger on the nas, right? Eyes on the nas. Brief, it's short, and it helps them reset and focus. Versus, could we please focus on the reading? Right? The language is very important. If you look here at, I'll just use the third one. While one student is bravely reading aloud, another student rolls their eyes and mutters something quietly to a neighbor. Hey, stop making fun of Fulan, right? Cut it out. That's what many of us might say just instinctively. However, if we are intentional with our words, and are even sometimes knowing when not to say something, we could use our teacher proximity, right? Walking towards a student, making calm eye contact, not looking upset, just looking at them, right? Looking at the adab rules that we have, be appreciative, right? To remind them of the expectation. And it's non-escalatory. It maintains the flow of the class, and it protects the reader's dignity. You're not making it a bigger issue for the student that maybe stumbled with their reading. Right? So if we think of these 3 things, the rule creation, the majlis, and the positive teacher language, and we go back to the scenario that we had, the 8th grade teacher scenario, right? If we have the adab rules in place, then the students would take ownership of that. Again, ideally over time. It connects to the goals and it reinforces their expectations daily. If the majlis was something that was done in that classroom, if they had that before the lesson, well, students would be primed. They'd have more confidence. Maybe they practiced one of them with you out loud together in a game. And you'd probably have a calmer emotional temperature in the class. And then if you look at the positive teacher language component of this, if we, take what was said in the frame and in the scenario, and we adjust it now, instead of the teacher responding, just saying stay on task, the teacher could be much more direct. You can do this. Start with and give them that instruction. Instead of saying this is important grammar, you can maybe say this lets you talk about yesterday in your conversations. Like give them the reason why. Why did we learn the Madi? Start with fa'ala. Start with the simplest one. Why are you copying that person? Instead of that, just say, show me how you individually do verb number 3. So it's a simple, small shift, but it's actually a very powerful one, and allows for students to clearly hear what your expectation is, gives them a chance to show you that they can do it, right? Instead of assuming that they can't. And then allows for the pace of the class to continue so you don't get into this struggle with students. So I'm going to pause here briefly. I know I've been talking a little bit. So I want to ask first, before I continue to now, what to do when it goes wrong, which is the last part of this. To say, yes, we will share the slides that I have here. And are there any questions so far from any of the participants? You can raise your hand and happy to have you come on the mic. Yeah, Ms. Ra? I see your hand there, Ms. Ra, if your mic is not on.
Honestly, we've been using responsive classroom in the school for so many years, and out of experience, it is really makes a difference when, especially to me personally, is the positive teacher response. You see the students immediately change their behavior when you're using these positive teacher responsive instead of the sentences that we might use it, even if it's in Arabic. We try to speak I can't say 100% in Arabic, but most of the time in the class would be the teacher speaking in Arabic when she's speaking or when she's giving instruction. It is really when they're used to say when they're used to hear هذا ليس جيد instead هذا خطأ هذا خطأ أو انظر إلى الورقة instead of لماذا تتكلم مع رفيقك أو يعني there is a lot of different ways to change the sentence even during Arabic class for the teacher to speak positively. It is really out of experience. It's hard at the beginning. I'm not saying it's easy because you need these sentences at the beginning. I used to write them down so I can remember them, honestly. But once you get used to them, it is really helpful in the classroom management.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Rawal. Anyone else like to add something or? Okay. We'll continue, and we do have some other scenarios here for you as well, inshallah. All right, so now things will go wrong, right? Meaning kids will still misbehave. It's just a natural part of schools. Even if we have all of the preventive things in place, there will be times when students are, unable to to do that. So now we're going to look at a few things that you can do to respond to misbehavior and the logical consequences that should result from that misbehavior. To give you a sense of this, though, I'm going to ask you some questions. And again, if you're able to raise your hand just to show me that, or use the thumb, I don't know if you can use your thumbs up on Zoom, but if you can, I'm going to ask you, has this ever happened to you as a person? So using the thumbs up feature, if you agree with the statement I'm going to put on the screen, then give it a thumbs up. Okay? So have you ever been late to an event? Let's see the hands or the thumbs up. I see one thumbs up. Okay. Good. I drove above the speed limit to at least cut down how late I will be to the event. How's that? Yeah, okay, I see some thumbs. Good. I thought the speed limit was unrealistic anyways. Why is it 40 here? It should be 50. Or why is it 50? It should be 60. I didn't think I would get caught speeding, so why not? Might as well to cut down the time that I need to be late. I didn't necessarily recognize how fast I was going. And everyone else is going at least 50. So, you know, I did the same. So I think a lot of us, as your thumbs up show, indicate that we've all been there. In this entire scenario, we're breaking the rule, right? We're breaking the law regarding the speed limit. And I think it's important to understand that we broke this rule because we rationalized to ourselves that we're late. I need to reduce the amount of time that I'm late so I can do this. You know, the end justifies the means in this scenario. But of course, none of us here would advocate for speeding. We want to be safe drivers on the road. And I say this or give this because I want you to first approach any student misbehavior with empathy. When students break the rules or when students don't follow the expectations, we have to have some empathy for them. There is going to be some reason why, right? Very, very rarely is it just absolute pure defiance that has no reason behind it. Even in those scenarios, there's something going on that is influencing the student. And we've all been in scenarios where we've done what was wrong and we've been shown. Sometimes you get pulled over, the cop shows you some mercy. Other times they give you the ticket, right? So we will need to respond to when they break rules. And there's a very simple understanding of what the consequence for breaking a rule should be. And in responsive classroom, there's 3 R's. They call it the 3 R's. One is the consequence has to be relevant. Okay, it has to be directly related to the action that the child did. It has to be realistic, something they can follow through on. And it has to be respectful. It has to be communicated with respect, not angrily, not over emotionally, but calmly to the student. So if you keep these in mind, there are 3 basically types of logical consequences you can have that are all relevant, realistic, and respectful. So the first one is what you might call you break it, you fix it, right? If something is wrong, then fix it by having them do the action that would repair that problem that it created. And we'll see some examples. The second is a loss of a privilege, something that's non-essential to their learning or to the activity. It's not a punishment, right? It just means they cannot engage in that privilege right now. And the third is what you might call take a break, right? They need a pause, they need a reset. And I have a way of that we do here at our school that can be useful in an Arabic language classroom. So you break it, you fix it. So if we have a misbehavior, I have an example here. Zain blurts out while a classmate shares. So you're doing something, a classmate is sharing, a student is sharing, and Zain blurts out. What might be a consequence that you might give to that student? Either someone on the mic or in the chat. If that happened in your class, what would you say or what would you do? What's the consequence for that? Okay, so I'll just continue. If you fix that, then you can come back on. So a logical consequence, right? Zain blurted. So now that means he's disrupted the environment. He needs to stop doing that, right? So he said something because he needed to wait. So the logical thing is simply just to say, Zain, please wait and try again by raising your hand, right? There's no need to escalate it any further than that. It resets the expectation, and the entire class also knows that you are holding the whole class accountable. If someone speaks out of turn, then they need to wait and raise their hand, right? This is a grade 1 example. Joe, in your class, grade 5, draws on his whiteboard, he's doodling things that are not related to the class, right? So someone may get upset, oh, why are you doing this? Stop doodling. Instead, I would argue teachers should just direct Joe to erase the board and attempt the assignment. Erase your doodles and answer the question. Or on this part of the board, answer the question, right? Don't make it more than it really needs to be. And you're trying to directly respond to the off-task behavior. Grade 9, Lena rolls her eyes during a correction. You're helping her with something. You're correcting her. She rolls her eyes at you. Why are you rolling your eyes? Why are you being disrespectful? Right? This is Abe, whatever it is. Right? Maybe you just need to have a conversation with Lena about the norms for being appreciative and being brave in the classroom. And that's just a simple conversation that can happen. It shouldn't happen necessarily right then and there unless you have the time to do that. But our conversations probably do, maybe at the end of class, right before they leave, right? It reinforces the norms and it repairs the dynamic between the students. So this is the idea. If something happens, figure out what can the student do to repair that immediately. If a student broke another student's pencil, they need to find another pencil or maybe grab one from the teacher box and give it to that student to use. Fix that, it's done. You break it, you fix it. The second type of consequence could be a loss of privilege. So again, some similar scenarios here. Someone, Amir repeatedly bends cards at the literacy center. So you have an activity at a center, there's some flashcards, Amir is bending the cards. So instead of shouting at Amir, telling him stop doing that, you let him know, okay, you're not ready to do this center today. You're going to move to another center, and he can't complete that activity today. He can complete it tomorrow, right? So that's a privilege that's lost. It's not essential to the lesson. And he can make it up at another time when he shows that he's ready to do that. And he sees, I have to have the right expectation, right behavior when I'm there. Layla jokingly switches to English during the dialogue, right? Maybe she's not ready to do the partner dialogue, so you redirect her to independent work. It's not a punishment, but she loses the privilege of working with a partner. Grade 11, Miguel interrupts multiple classmates in literature discussion. So there's some discussion happening. Maybe they're reading a text and trying to decipher it. So he is not adding positively to the discussion. So he's redirected to observe the discussion. Okay, Miguel, you're going to take notes for us. We'll leave the discussion to these other students. All right. He has to stay quiet while he observes and writes the notes. So you give him another task now besides the main task that's there. His privilege that he's lost is he's lost the active discussion, the active participation component. But he's still learning. He still hears the other students. He hasn't been sent out the class. He's not getting a detention or anything like that. He's just been redirected. And this loss of privilege shows him, okay, well, if I want to participate, then I have to do it in the respectful way, right? Maybe you point back to the adab acronym that you have on your wall. So you fix it, you break it is one thing you can do, one category you could do. You could take away a privilege, or sometimes you can have them take a break, right? So just to sort of, show this to you, a class is reading short Arabic sentences. Fatima is reading slowly as she pauses to decode a word. Omar mimics her pronunciation to the student next to him and he smirks. A few nearby students begin to giggle. The teacher walks calmly towards Omar and says in an even voice, Omar, take a break in the Sakina space. Omar stands up and moves to the designated Sakina space without further discussion. The teacher maintains focus on Fatima and says warmly, Fatima, take your time, we're listening. So imagine if this happened in the classroom, which exemplifies this idea that Omar did something he shouldn't have done while a student is doing something and the teacher is actively teaching. Instead of causing a scene, instead of saying something like go to timeout or get out of the class, it's framed as take a break in the Sakina space. And so again, in an Arabic classroom, we can use the word Sakina, right? A place where they can reset and refocus and then rejoin the class. So this is important because it offers the student a chance to correct their behavior. And, sometimes even just that getting up and going somewhere is important so that the student recognizes that, okay, I need to, as the students say today, lock in. I need to be back in the right mood. The teacher didn't make it a ruckus. It was neutral and calm. It was not go stand over there. It's not with that language. Go to the Sakina space and come back when you're ready, right? It was brief. It told the student what to do. The class continued. I've found that it's a very useful tool in any class. When I was teaching middle school science in Orlando, I had a Sakina space. I called it the cool down corner, right? Over there. But we have really found that these things allow for students to get the time to process what's happening so that they can then reset. Again, if you have the expectations in place, you have the right language that you're using to help guide them, they will turn around. And these are just some samples of Sakina spaces that we've had at our school. It could be a chair just in your classroom. If you make it nice, then students will want to go there sometimes. And yes, maybe one or two will want to go there too often. But you remind them the reason for it is to help us refocus, re-energize, etc. So alhamdulillah, I know I've mentioned quite a few things here. And so we're at the end. So let's just put it all together and then ask any questions if you have. So let's now, with all of this, thinking about what's happening to the student, why might they misbehave? How do we prevent that, try to prevent that in the first place? And what do we do if they misbehave? Let's look back at that scenario. So I put it together in this chart here, where if we view student misbehaviors as not simply, khata, as some mistake or error that they've made, but instead see that they're trying to tell us something, especially in our language classrooms that can be difficult environments academically, we need to support them with having the right rules. Adab was an example that I gave of that. The right classroom community, which you could foster through a majlis kind of idea. I would do it daily. When I taught high school chemistry, I had a daily majlis. It was 5 to 7 minutes at the beginning of the class. Sometimes I would have another one at the end if things just didn't go well that day. Hey, let's talk about it as a class. How can we help one another succeed? That community building is so important to helping with the disruptions and the bullying. And hopefully no bullying comes from this as well. The positive teacher language, as Mr. Rawa said, being calm, direct, clear. And then when the students need help, we help them by modeling what's the right way to respond. If you did something wrong, fix it right away. Maybe you can't participate in this activity now, you can participate in it later. I would not take away things like recess or whatever those are. Like those kids need to move around, but take away something that is non-essential, but gets the point across and gets them a chance to reset. And then the Sakina space, i.e. take a break, go somewhere to pause, reflect, calm down, and come back. So hopefully what I hope I presented is that there's never one answer to all behavior issues, but if we understand that students need support, we have to have the right structures in place, and then we model and exemplify the right way to help them with their misbehavior, then we'll have students that are in a climate that is, robust enough. They can be brave and they can exhibit and learn the self-discipline that they need to manage themselves. So we're not always in this cycle of trying to respond to misbehavior all the time. Students will learn the expectations from you. You hold them accountable in the right way. And I've seen it time and time again, no matter the subject, whether I taught high school chemistry, Islamic studies, Arabic, it works. So I hope that you can take this, reflect on it. I have provided in these slides some resources for you all. So all of these links should work when it's shared with you. I have references here just, from the academic side. And then you're more than welcome to always reach out to me, no matter what you teach, where you are. And I'd be happy to continue the conversation. So I'll pause there. I'll leave it on this slide and open it up to any questions that anyone may have or thoughts that you might want to share.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail. I just want to say a few words before we open the floor to questions.
Sure.
Thank you for this excellent presentation and for engaging our audience on the issues you talked about. Thank you for introducing us to the principles of classroom management, for explaining to us what school climate, a positive school climate means, behaviorism, framing classroom rules in a positive way, and many other good ideas that you've talked about. I like the way you laid out the theoretical framework, then the practical applications and the prevention structures, and also some sample scenarios. So I hope these were beneficial and cause for reflection on the part of our participants. So without further ado, thank you again. Just one remark. If you can share the slides with me, then we can post them on our website.
Absolutely.
In that way, it's accessible to everyone all the time, permanently. So without further ado, I'm going to give you back the floor and let you engage with the participants with their questions and queries.
Sure.
Thank you again.
Thank you. I see Fadwa.
Yeah, can I say one? I like it. I really loved it, and we need always something always to remind us to go back to the right path. So yes, we do have a lot of classroom management. We face a lot of things, but I would like to go back to the first scenario. I like examples. I like everything. So the first scenario, which is really grammar and the verb fa'ala, and I'm not sure even the high level. I don't know. Let's talk about novice, high, beginner, mid.
Yes.
I think, I'm not sure, but this is not the right way to approach the lesson, So as you said, we need discussion in the classroom. I believe the teacher should really create a kind of a story, include acting, include pictures, include something like that, and then highlight the past verb, and then can connect it to yesterday or anything. So just to give them the worksheet and ask them to conjugate, it will create problems in the classroom. I'm talking about my classroom, about even when I taught at George Mason University. They get scared from the script, from the Arabic. They have their background knowledge that Arabic is difficult and things like that. So it's it's way much better if we make it meaningful, engaging lesson to let everybody have a part from the cake, let's say.
No, you're absolutely right. I really appreciate that, and you know, you're right. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of, and I know this was about, effectively managing or responding to disruptions and bullying in the classroom. But I agree, it starts with
the lesson.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The
And there's so many ideas for how to make that a much more engaging lesson.
Yeah.
But I think the point I was trying to show there was engagement is critical, and if engagement is not there, then naturally these things are going to occur. And when they occur, we have to, it's a reflection on ourselves, as you said, like, did I, as the teacher, prepare the right lesson? Did I really understand where their level is? Do I understand what social emotional needs they have, their cultural literacy needs, right? To maybe engage in a play or a story or something like that. I need to take all that into consideration. If I don't, then I'm going to see these things. So you're absolutely right.
They come up with big packages, from the other classes, from their family, from the mom. So how we can make it from the first 5 minutes, how we can make them engaging and switch their brain to the language and be ready to what I need to give them. I believe this is important. Will reduce the classroom management. If anything,
100%.
One thing comes up, then I have my rules. I write the name on the board, whatever. The school sometimes they create their own its rules. So I have to follow. Then I can. So as you said, the quiet corner, there is a reflection. They need to write why I send them there, and it's a break, yes, but they need to do reflection. Mental reflection to convince me why they come up with this not problem, I don't want to say problem, behaviors. And then I have to think about it. How can I resolve it with him and to prevent it later on, not to let anybody, any students come up with these things. Actually, the activities in the classroom, I believe, I don't want to say I'm sorry, but I feel like the spoken Arabic, the interactive activities, more than papers. It's way much better, and I feel it in my classroom. From day one, they too identified the word marhaba, ahlan, and then ma ismak, the question and the answer. First day, they said the word. Second day, they identified the word, like because the brain takes picture of the word. So for me, how did they get it? Repetition, bring the words in a different activities, and that's it. So, and I didn't have any problem. Day one.
That's wonderful.
Do I have problems? Yes, I do. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I want to learn all the time. And thank you for reminding us. Thank you for reminding me of the positive words, because sometimes I'm tough with them. But I take them outside and I'm really not tough. I don't embarrass them in front of the kids.
Of course.
No, but I mean, my voice, I'm very firm, strong voice, and they know that they need to be quiet. So, but always I have discussion with them. Always I have, my class is open. We call it social lunch. They bring their lunch, I bring my lunch, and then we eat together. We listen to music and things like that.
Thank you for sharing.
That's what I felt from the beginning.
I would love to come visit your classroom and see what it's like.
Come. Yeah, it's fun because a lot of activities. I can send you a video.
Yeah, I would love to.
This is why I noticed the lesson was the issue with any problem like in the. Can I excuse myself now because I have to be ready for my next class?
Of course.
First, and then be ready for
myself as well soon. But thank you, Sister Fatma.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Khalil, for bringing
Thank you.
people and preparing this. I can't do it. I really appreciate your work.
Thank
Thank you, Fadwa.
Bye-bye. مع السلامة.
مع السلامة.
Yes,
Um,
Layali.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
I
salam.
hope it's not too late. I wanted to say, Jazakallah khair. Thank you. The idea of Sakina place, which is kind of similar to the Zen corner or Zen place, it's really nice. I like it. I'm like not sure how it's perceived. I know that for some kids, I can totally imagine that they would want to be there, so they might intentionally misbehave just so that they can like get that,
Yeah.
moment of, like glamour and, like attention and, and kind of like ask to go there
Yeah.
or to like, isolate or whatever. So how do we prevent that from, like backfiring basically? And
Yeah.
then another thing is like with the bullying with like especially with like heritage speakers versus second language learners being in the same classroom. Um, you might have addressed that, but I feel like is there like any surefire like strategies that have helped motivate heritage or native speakers to see themselves as agents and helpers versus just I guess being bored or kind of acting out?
Yeah, those are two really good questions. My initial answer for the first one is yes, definitely there are some students that will want to go to the Sakina space often or do something to go there. And I think it's important to remember to let students know this is not, no one's being sent there because of punishment, like going and just standing in a corner, right? The idea is we do allow students in our school, for example, to ask if they want, like, hey, I was working, but I'd rather work, in the Sakina space for a few minutes. Can I do that? And we'll say sure, because maybe they just needed to move a little bit just to help them in that moment, and then they can come back. I think modeling it is important. So a big thing here is you have to consistently remind and model for students that, or maybe it's, a reminder in the morning, the classroom message that you have at the beginning of the class, that if at any time I see students might need a break from the activity, I'll ask you to go to the Sakina space for a moment and then come back to help you reset. Also, too, making sure that you don't have, it's not a fun corner, right? Like with games and things that will be too distracting. I've seen teachers keep a very simple setup, maybe something that's like a fidget just for them to kind of calm down a little bit. So don't make it over, stimulating, and keeping it brief. And again, if a student actually starts to abuse it, then it's a conversation that needs to happen with them and potentially with their parents as well. Again, not to get them in trouble, but to say, hey, this is the expectation. You're not following it. How can we work together so that you follow it? For the heritage question, I think you're on the right track, I would say, when you look at giving them agency to be a helper for either yourself or to other students with instructions, but they're going to need coaching on how to do that. So you're going to, if you identify a few students who are really good, or maybe are heritage speakers, they finish quickly, they're usually accurate. They need to see how you would help a student so they know how to do it properly and not just give a student the answer. They haven't been taught how to coach or to mentor or to teach like how we do. So it may be that, let's say you have groups and a student finishes and you say, hey, come, Zaid, come here and you can help me help a student. And then you show them how you do it. And then you say, hey, okay, Zaid, now you help them with 2 through 4. I'm going to go check on the other group. and it's just a direct, clear thing. If there is a student over time that says, I don't want to do that, well, then maybe it's finding another way for them to use their skills for something else. So maybe they could help you with a job to prepare for an upcoming lesson. Because they can sort through the vocabulary words faster than someone else, The point is, it's all about redirecting them to something that takes them out of the possibility of engaging in disruptive behavior, helping someone else by modeling it, and then redirecting them to another activity or having some other kind of thing for them to do so that they're not just sitting waiting to, cause a disruption. So those are just some initial thoughts that I have on that. Any other final questions?
That's good. I want to ask, like, at your school, do you separate like students by level or background, or do you like integrate them but differentiate within the classroom?
Yeah, so
And
in our elementary, so up to and including fifth grade, the students are just in their grade, so third grade is just third grade. In middle school for sixth through eighth grade, we have it leveled. So you could be in eighth grade and be in level 1. And you could be in sixth grade and be in level 2 or we have like a level 3 kind of. We have about 4 levels total. So we differentiate it, or have it leveled in middle school. But even when we do that, like the beginner level 1 class, it's gonna have kids who have never read Arabic before or very little, and there's kids who know the alphabet but maybe don't know or know how to read but don't know words. And then among the heritage speakers, there's a lot of variation. Some of them, their knowledge of their lahja is very high, but their knowledge of fusha is really not there, or they don't know the grammar at all. So there's still always a lot of variability, even in either model. So that's really where for us, I know it's difficult to have different things prepared, but that's really where that differentiation is really necessary.
Okay, Dr. Ismail, thank you so much for everything you've done with us today. We appreciate this highly valuable presentation and very hands-on theme that touches the core of our teaching mission. So thank you very much, and we hope
Again,
to collaborate again
yes, thank you,
in other
Professor.
venues, in other times. Thank you so much, and thank you to our dear guests, our esteemed guests and participants. Thank you for engaging with Dr. Ismail, and thank you for bringing your insights and questions.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Ma salama.